Thanks for joining us for Magic in the Room. Before we start today's episode, I want to make sure you know about our latest online course called Guest Service. In this self-paced online learning course, you'll learn 5 simple steps to ensure an outstanding customer experience and how to ensure people feel seen, heard, and understood. Check out the course at purposeandperformancegroup.com/online learning or find the link in today's show notes.
Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I am Hannah, Miss Fortune Bratterud.
And I am Luke, the Changeling Freeman.
Okay, Changeling.
It was scary. That's scary. Like a werewolf.
I gotta Google what it is.
It's like
I know what
the
it is.
skin.
Well, I'm
like
the idiot.
Skin Man. You know?
The Skin Man?
Yeah. A shapeshifter, something like that.
Okay. Changeling.
That's scary, isn't it?
If you don't have to Google it, I'm sure. To anyone that doesn't have to Google it.
Well,
This all has to stay in, just so everyone knows.
Wasn't the origin of the changeling when somebody got a baby with some kind of deformity that they didn't want and they left it out for wild animals to eat, and then instead they got this like horrible monster that started haunting the village?
Oh,
Did
I
I
like
just
it.
make that up?
You're
Yeah,
probably
we're going
right.
with that.
Yeah.
Hey, don't
me.
Fact or fiction, no matter, remember?
Luke the Changeling Freeman.
Yeah. And Chris, Dr. Death, Province. We'll go with it. Horrible with nicknames, by the way, but you two did an excellent job.
Well,
Very memorable.
I think we're going to be telling horror stories today.
I think that's the idea. Yes, horror stories. So let's jump right in. Like the whole idea is, this is our Halloween theme episode. We are not in costume today. We promise costumes for next year.
We actually do believe in costumes,
Yes.
especially on Halloween.
We wear one every day. Mine usually involve pink socks and, pastel shirts.
Yeah,
But
I'm actually in costume today. I'm wearing a blazer, which I'm dressed up as, I think, a business person.
yeah,
Anytime I put product in my hair, it's putting on a costume.
sure.
Yeah. Wearing costume.
Anytime I have a
You
collar
got it.
on,
And you have a
Right.
hat on. Every day you have a different hat, Chris.
that is true.
Different costume,
Except
different
podcast days, I usually try to wear the same hat now.
Yeah.
But yes, all part of our costumes. But, as we live our stories, we encounter some horror along the way. Bad situations, maybe it's bad examples, things we've lived through. That's what we're going to share about today. And we're going to invite everyone else to come along and think about some of the things they've lived through and come out the other side of and been the, hero in their own horror story. So let's jump right in. Who wants to kick us off? We're going to focus on some business horror stories because I think those are super relatable across most everyone. Let's jump in. Welcome to our Halloween special of Magic in the Room. Today we're going to share some real life horror stories from the business world. So let's get started. Well, what's scarier than losing all your money?
Ooh.
Alicia, can you do one of those sound effect things? Make it really scary. Losing all your money.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so I think there are two types of people. I've probably talked about this on the podcast before. There's people that grew up without money and then have a little and are afraid of ever losing it because of the security that it provides and not having it previously. And then there's another set of people that grew up without money that then have it and don't mind not having money again. And I happen to fall into that latter part. So I'm not really scared of investing or like putting it out there or making bets. And I do believe that there is literally 1,000 ways to make money. Like just pick a couple, dial them in, you know, and go make it. It's out there to be had. But along the way, like you're not always going to hit home runs, right? You're going to foul some off. You're going to hit some singles and some doubles. They're not always going to be home runs. But along the way, you learn to like try not to strike out. And unfortunately, I have a strikeout story. So there was a gap in the market, and it related to how casino players viewed offers. Like effectively, how do I know if I'm invited to a concert, pick up a gift, what's my free play this month, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a gap in the market about how that was being done. And we tried to seize an opportunity right there. We are very close to how that data is processed, how the offers are loaded, like what happens in these systems, in these operating systems to really facilitate the transaction between a resort and a guest. I mean, that's the marketing work we do. And it's like, hey, let's go build this thing because here's how we can do it differently. And so we know the gap. We jumped in. We built the thing. It cost, $50,000, $60,000, whatever it was, to kind of build it out. And then it relied on a third-party API. So effectively, what made our app work was knowing what the offers were. Like that was key to making to activating our functionality. And in order to do that, we had to go to those system providers, which there's only 4 or 5 of. And we said, here's what our technology does. We have a resort ready to go live with it. All we need is your API calls to facilitate this presentation to the player. And that third party said, yeah, we really like what you're doing there. And we're not going to give you our APIs, but we are going to do what you're doing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
So we go back to them and we say, so are you saying there's no access to your APIs? And they're like, that's exactly what we're saying. I'm saying, but we have these 15 example properties that have those APIs, and they're your customer and they're our customer. So why wouldn't they be able, as part of their maintenance and licensing fees, to connect 2 disparate systems under their OSS? And they said, yeah, talk to legal. And it's just a position where, what did I learn? I learned that technology turns ultra fast. Like the speed at which technology is developed, a company that is a $1.3 billion company can spend a fraction of their resource and build what we had built in 3 months.
Yeah.
Like they could beat a market in 90 days with something that took us 8 months to build, and all of our capital at the time. They could effectively just duplicate it like that, squash us like a bug, and we essentially wasted all of our money. So it definitely raises my radar about technology and trying to even talk about that space. And it showed me the importance of IP, like where are the intellectual property gaps, having a great IP attorney, the importance of paper, like how things are contracted, how things would be contracted between us and the resort with, them championing the API. Maybe it's a different story. Don't know. But anyway, I learned a lot about what an adequate opportunity has to look like in order to even think about technology. And if it's nothing more than an idea, let it set as an idea. Yeah. Like, do not try to action those. You have to know fully, like, does it require third-party access? Okay, which third party do I partner with? Who is the client partner that will champion. There's just a big story, and you have to write all of the story. And I think by the time you do that, a lot of those opportunities, we'll pass on that one.
Yeah.
But I had to set that $50,000 on the table and light it on fire in order to learn that.
Yeah, sometimes the biggest lessons and the most valuable learning it all comes at a cost. And
Right.
sometimes it comes at a steep financial cost. Sometimes it comes at a steep time cost or energy cost or other type of resource.
Yeah, and that's a great call. It's what else could I have done? Mm-hmm. Not just with the money, but with the time. Mm-hmm. It's 8 months of build. There was a lot there. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't the money that got lit on fire. It was all the time that it took to get there. And I'd like to avoid that in the future.
Well,
Yeah.
I just read a quote this morning that said, any mistake repeated more than once is a decision.
Yeah.
I bet you won't make that decision again.
I bet you're right.
So what was your learning about who you partner with?
Yeah, that was make sure, and whether they're male or female, this is like not gender specific, but make sure they're the guy.
Yeah.
Like that they're the person with the right chops to make the thing a success. Mm-hmm. And that's, you get this feeling when someone's not the guy.
Yeah.
Like when you're going, love the idea, but is this the person that can help me push this across the line?
Yeah.
And when you get that thing in your gut that says, I'm not sure if this is the guy, you can't go down the path with that partner. Mm-hmm. You can't. Like, don't know when, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, but it falls apart. So issue that litmus test. Is this the guy that takes me from where I am to where I want to be?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I was going to analog that to a horror story, it's something around the inventor who creates a creature that then comes to life on its own and terrorizes the inventor, right? Gets co-opted. Or maybe there's a possession story in there, like, oh, my child that I created is all of a sudden possessed by some other entity and now is going to terrorize me and take everything I have, right? So very scary. It's very terrifying.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, though, the technology, at least the application, ends up being built by the people that should have built it in the first place.
Yeah.
Which was my point. Like, don't leave gaps in the market. Like, if you're a $1.3 billion business, then don't leave gaps. So, but that's the thing. When those folks leave gaps, they can close them really quick. And if you're trying to squeeze into the gap, you get squashed like grape.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. That was a scary story.
That was
Okay, so we've lost some money and some
really
time.
scary.
Where are you guys? Where are you guys taking us?
Well, my story is called The Unrecognized.
That's scary.
Isn't that scary? Yeah. So there I was in Atlanta. I had just launched the biggest project of my career to date, and it was a smashing success. A 2-week launch. It couldn't have gone any better. I was over the moon. I was so excited. I had all these ideas for how we could create an even bigger success and what kind of celebration we would have. So really, I write this really excited email to my boss with a summary of how well everything had gone and some of my ideas for how we would come back and do a celebration at the end of this program. And I'm just like excitedly waiting for the feedback, right? And some acknowledgement and some kind of recognition, because this was 6 months in the works. I had worked my tail off. I had invested personal time, resources, sleep, and this is, it all had culminated in this really awesome launch. Everything, we were hitting on all cylinders, home run, first time in the history of the company that we had done anything similar. And then I get the response. And it says, "There will be no celebration. Your name is not going to be associated with this project any further. Your colleague in Atlanta is going to take over the project, and you will not be coming back, and your duties with this project are now over."
Ooh.
Whoa. It was the biggest letdown of my career. So from the biggest accomplishment, biggest sense of pride in having done something really cool and really awesome, completely in the basement. And so what I learned from that, based on my own level of engagement for several weeks following, and there is actually a happy ending to this story because things did turn around. Make a long story short, there were people advocating for me, and my colleague in Atlanta was one of those voices who said, this is not the right choice, right? But what I learned about a leader's influence when it comes to recognition and its role in engagement is massive, right? One of the biggest promoters, drivers of engagement is paying positive attention to what people do well, right? So positive recognition, positive acknowledgement. And I definitely learned from experience what it does to someone's level of engagement and enthusiasm when not only are you not being recognized for all the hard work, it is just completely dismissed. And in this case, it was a leader that was new to our organization and new to our team, that hadn't necessarily been around for all the lifting that happened to get this off the ground, maybe wasn't able to connect the dots of what it had actually taken, and all the different personalities on the team, right? And it turned out, this leader had made a rash decision, and it was reversed after some time, and he learned a little bit more. But just that sense of letdown, it was the first time in my career with that company that I started making calls to other contacts in my network to see what other roles were available. It was the first time I started actively looking for another job.
Wow. And then, what I appreciate about that is, that's the kind of stuff that it's not recoverable. You can't come back from that. As long as that's your senior leader or that's the person you're reporting to, it doesn't get fixed. We can work past it.
Yeah.
But it's not forgotten.
Yeah.
And because there's no sense of security around what happens the next time this person wants to make a rash decision.
Yeah. And for me as the employee in that scenario, there was no coming back for that relationship. Yes, we moved past it. I worked with this leader for another year or two. And the first opportunity I had to move organizations and move leaders, I took it. In fact, I crafted a whole new opportunity with a different leader that I had trust with, and came up with a whole new role, a whole new position in that leader's organization, where I got to still do what I was doing in a little bit different capacity, but reporting to somebody else that had a different understanding of what I brought to the table.
Yeah.
And so this particular leader acted kind of blindsided and surprised and disappointed when I moved to a different organization. And there's another lesson there of, people can move past things and we can forgive, but we won't necessarily forget. And if we don't see the value that you bring as a leader, we're going to find a different leader.
Sure. And I think there's a lesson in there as, when you are the senior leader or you're the person being reported to, yes, we kind of start scratching at that. What do you have the right to do versus the responsibility to? You might have rights to act in a lot of ways. And don't forget that everything has an expense. That there is a balance sheet and a ledger on both sides, and you're influencing the other person's of you.
Yeah. So
what balance are you carrying?
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about we deposit in dimes and draw down in dollars, right? And in that case, like there was just such an extract right there. Like he hit Hannah's balance sheet, and he was going to have a credit balance for forever. Like he was never going to dig out of that hole.
Right.
So he could deposit all day long. It was never going to get to zero. And that's why the minute Hannah sees an opportunity, it's like, here's a leader that I can move with and have a positive balance with. Whereas right now, I'm never going to get to a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to keep in mind is we carry a ledger with everyone in our organization. And every day, all of us are calculating, like, what is the value? Is this a plus? Is it a premium or is it a discount? So, premium leaders steward the well-being of the people that report to them.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. They look for an opportunity in that case to make a deposit and say, fantastic program launch. Love the program. Great feedback. Let's talk about it going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I really heard echoes of, I don't know, like a Fatal Attraction or The Crazy Roommate that you realize like, oh, everything was going great. And, or like a movie where, it's a happy married couple. Because in an organization, you're in a committed relationship, right? And it costs a lot to leave the committed relationship. So you're like on holiday and you go out to get groceries and you come back and find your spouse has like murdered the maid, or whatever. And then the horror story proceeds to unfold from there as you try and survive and get out of this thing. So very scary. And I'm glad that you are a survivor, right? You made it out of there,
The hero.
Live to tell the story another day.
Yeah.
There we go.
The hero.
All right. So on that scary note, let's go to our question of the day.
All right, welcome to our question of the day. And today we're going to get into a little bit of worthy and worthless, one of my favorite segments here on the show. So, yeah, this is a good one, fitting for time of year. Halloween, worthy or worthless?
I was afraid that we were going to have one that I would have to think deeply about, but
Right.
Worthy. I love Halloween. And more importantly, my kids love Halloween. I think it's their favorite holiday. Like, I think it beats out Christmas as far as just pure time they spend talking about it, thinking about it, preparing for it. And then just like the adventure of, hey, let's go dress up and get candy and these costumes that they've planned out for so long. And then, all this work has gone into them, and then are they actually going to work or not, or are pieces going to fall off of them or whatever. So fun scale of a holiday, I think Halloween is really high on the fun scale. We have a tradition, and we've only lived in our house that we've been in now for 2 Halloweens, so this year will be the 3rd. But we drag a fire ring out into the front yard, and we sit there and have a fire while people come up and get candy and invite people to make a s'more and sit there and have drinks, and it's fun. The kids go walk around the neighborhood. So,
man, that's so neighborly of you. And I would imagine that your house probably sometime in the next week will transform into like the world's largest arts and crafts experiment as
Haunted
you guys
house?
get into building I just don't see Luke Freeman saying, yeah, we'll go get that at Halloween Express.
No, you don't buy a costume.
Yeah,
that's not a real
you build
costume.
the costume.
Yeah, you create it. So,
Okay, so how
if it doesn't include a drill press and a scroll saw and whatever else, is it a real costume?
Yeah.
Oh, paint. How many colors of spray paint do you have to buy every year for your costume? How many pounds of cardboard are you using? So, yeah, that's kind of
so how aspirational are the boys getting this year?
I don't know. We'll have to see. I think they've got a few different ideas. They like to make up characters too. So they're not so much, hey, I'm going to be Iron Man. It's more like, I'm going to be this hero that I made up.
And here are its attributes, and this is its superpowers, and this is the costume that I made up.
Or last year, Peter was Tim the Enchanter from Monty Python's Search for the Holy Grail.
Ooh.
And so we had to make a helmet with horns on it. And it was super obscure. And anyone that he ran into was like, hey, are you from Monty Python? He's like, yes. Because he would do the lines, and it was really great. So
That's awesome.
So that's my fun scale reason. Also, we're all on a one-way train to death.
We need that gentle reminder.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to all get comfortable with that. And I don't think Western civilization is super comfortable with it. And Halloween is a healthy outlet to celebrate that. I don't know. There are more worlds than these. There's a mystery. There's darkness. And
Everything will end.
Everything will end, and it's scary, and it's okay to be scared sometimes. That's a part of the human experience. So that's my other reason that I think it's a healthy outlet, since we don't celebrate the winter solstice or things like that, right? At least we have Halloween.
Gotcha.
Okay. I mean, I might almost be convinced by that.
Did I sell you?
I think so.
Yes.
I mean, I've been on this sort of evolution from growing up in Norway, where Halloween traditionally wasn't a thing. And so I didn't really know that much about it.
So did you have a Day of the Dead, Halloween, anything where there was something about dying?
There's nothing really.
Zombie Day?
There's not a big cultural celebration of death in modern Norway. But then, so case in point, my sister Ruth came to visit a few years ago while I was living in Colorado, and she brought the whole family, and it just happened to be Halloween when they got here. And her response was, oh my gosh, I hate this holiday. It is so stupid. Adults dressing up like children and in ridiculous costumes, basically. And she's a lawyer, and she does really important work. Not that she doesn't have fun, but that's not her expression of fun, is dressing up in a silly costume. I think it would make her feel very uncomfortable. So I've been on this sort of, I kind of came from that perspective. We were also raised in a family where anything that was reminiscent of the occult was looked at as something bad, right? So that was just to be avoided, and it wasn't certainly not a part of my family tradition. But as I've been in the States now for 25 years, and I've seen all the different expressions of Halloween and how much fun kids have with it, and how it's become this, it's a fun way to be able to take on a different persona, but when we put on a costume, we kind of get to be somebody different, right? And try on a different identity. And that part of it, I can really connect with, right? I can try on a different identity by looking and acting like somebody else, and nobody's going to judge me for it because it's what we do, right?
Yeah.
So regardless of the roots of the holiday, and if we really get into the roots of any holiday, there's all kinds of skeletons buried in the closet of these kind of very hallmarky holidays that we celebrate, right?
Yeah.
So I would say I've come from, I would have said even 10 years ago, totally worthless. Today I would say worthy.
Yeah. And we all wear a costume every day, unless we live at a nudist colony.
Well,
And
it's true.
so do we just choose, is Gucci going to pick my costume for me? Or am I going to create my own costume?
Yeah.
And on Halloween, we get to create our own costume.
Yeah, I love the creative expression in that. And then I happen to be dating someone who Halloween is his favorite holiday, and his birthday is in October. So I'm pretty sure that Halloween is going to be a big thing this year in our household and going forward.
Yeah, I love that, putting on that identity. And like, would anyone ever select a costume that they didn't identify with?
On some level.
On some level, right? On some level.
Yeah. All right, Chris, worthy or worthless?
I would say before I had children, totally worthless. Because like my experience growing up was, I think I had one Halloween costume ever, The other times it was just a clown, because that's about the limit of my creative expression. Like, I can be a fat clown, I can be a skinny clown, I can be a clown with overalls, I can be a clown without overalls. So I was Darth Vader for like 3 or 4 years, and then I was a clown the rest of the time. So yeah, not a lot of value in that. And then you get to, I don't know, like early adult, there's parties and costumes and the whole thing, but all it is another night, just a different excuse for the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then when you have kids and you see like how much they enjoy it, that search, like, I can't wait to go trick-or-treating, I can't wait to, the planning and looking forward to what they're going to be. So kids, yes, offers value, worthy. Prior to that, I would have called it worthless. But like, my favorite thing is totally like the value of the jokes that it brings.
Okay,
Like,
let's hear 'em.
did you know that all monsters have the same health insurance?
I did not.
No. What is it?
Metascare. And it does, the thought of it does bring up a question to me, like, do you think zombies eat popcorn with their fingers?
I don't know. Do they?
No, they eat them separately. And I think one of my other favorites is, do you know that monsters party their ass off on Halloween, but only in bars? Do you know why?
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 They're there for the booze. So if nothing else, yeah, lay it on. If nothing else, Halloween gives us a lot of value in dad jokes.
And not to mention that for like a month, you get to steal all the best candy from your kids' leftover Halloween candy.
That's called the dad tax.
Yes.
Because they're always like, hey, I had more candy than this yesterday. Sorry, bro. Dad tax.
I thought I had like 3 Reese's in here.
Right? No.
What happened to
And
them?
now you just have 3 Mary Janes and some Lifesavers. All right, that's our question of the day. Let's get back to the show.
All right. So we are back from question of the day, and I think it's my turn.
It is your
It is your
turn.
You guys ready to be
What's your horror story, Luke?
scared,
I'm waiting with bated
thrills,
breath.
and chills? Okay.
Mhm.
So this is called The Undead. And it has a couple chapters too. So chapter 1 of The Undead is the axe murderer. Okay. So in an axe murderer movie, like they think they get away a bunch of times, but like he's still there. He's still in the house or chasing them or behind that next door. So here's how this part of the story goes. So executive leadership team gets an email, or you pass someone in the hall and you're like, hey, did you hear? Like, what? No, what is it? He's going to announce that he's retiring, right? He's pulling back from day-to-day operations. And pretty soon that word travels throughout the leadership team, and they're like, okay, like our executive leader, our CEO, he's finally going to do it. We've been talking about this for like 2 or 3 years, right? All of these ideas I've held on to, all of these things that I'm ready to do, we pretty much, we're excited. We know who's going to backfill that. We know what the leadership team is going to look like. We have some alignment around where we're going to shift some of our focus. Fast forward a couple weeks. Hey, in talking to the board, the leader thinks that they think what they want to do is like a 6-month transition period with the new leader. And you're like, okay, I mean, that sounds like kind of a long time, but okay, we'll do that. Or they set a date, 18 months from now or 2 years from now is going to be the final date, right, for this person. And so you start going down the road, and some things transition over, but then every once in a while he comes back, right? And you think, that you've had some responsibility released. Okay, now I have ownership. He's really pulled back from day to day. He really is in a coaching role, right? Lots of times they phase transition, right? So we're in the phase of the transition where he's in a coaching role of the new executive leader. And I really do have this new service, this new vertical, this new program that can make some change. But then I open the door to my office and there he is. Now I have a few questions about some of what you've been doing over the last couple months, right? And you get to sit there and be told why this doesn't, it doesn't really make sense to me. I think the board's going to have some questions about that. Have you talked to the new leader about this? Well, yeah, they think it's a great idea.
That's why we're doing it.
That's why we're doing it. Did they not tell you about it? Oh, well, I don't know. They might have mentioned something, right? And he keeps coming back to everyone, right? Next chapter, the jump scare. So you're moving forward. You think maybe that the transition has actually happened, right? You haven't seen around the office for a week or two. With founders, sometimes, like maybe you haven't seen them for a few months, right? They're the founder of the company. Maybe they still are the owner or majority owner. And like, you think they're out fishing and on vacation and seeing their grandkids or something like that. So you've moved forward and you're getting ready to have a meeting in the boardroom. Or this is where personal experience jumps in. You've even brought in maybe a leadership consultant or a strategy person to help you and the new team think about what are your priorities. And someone calls you on your cell, or they text you. And they're like, he's in the building. It's a jump scare because everyone's getting up and piling their stuff in their bags. And my personal experience with the story, hiding in a closet as the consultant because he doesn't want you there, right? This is not part of the plan, right? So you got to kind of hide there.
Man, you're not even a skeleton.
Right, until this apparition has passed through the building. And only then can you come out of hiding.
Wow.
Okay. Last chapter, Boss Cemetery, right? So if you guys know, in Pet Cemetery, the cat gets killed, right? They go bury the cat in the special pet cemetery, and the cat comes back. It's a magical cemetery. And then their child gets killed. It's tragic. They put him in pet cemetery, and he comes back. Hannah, you don't know pop culture,
I
so it's
don't
fine.
know pop culture.
Okay,
I'm
but
gonna
the
have to go
idea is
research
that
this.
is Boss Cemetery. So it's all said and done.
Yeah.
The transition has happened. It could be a year or two later. All of a sudden, you get a phone call. He has come back. He is undead,
Whoa.
right? Board got wind of something, right? He made a call and said, "I just don't understand what they're doing down there.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna waste $15 million.
They need me to save them.
Yep.
Are you sure
After
about
all,
this?"
I haven't
After
done this
all.
in 40 years. What do I not know?
And so the protagonists have to deal with this undead, and they have to put the final stake in and say, we were really tried to be gracious here. It was a long transition. We kept getting roadblocks. Now, yes, there are some performance issues, but guess who's caused them? We've had to hold on to all of our old ways of doing things while trying to make change for new ways of doing things. And now we have to actually go to the board or to whoever it is and say,
Drive the stake.
drive the stake through the heart and move on. And man, I wish it didn't have to be this story. But my story that I just told is the amalgamation of how many stories that we've been a part
Oh,
of.
man. The undead is for real.
It is for real. And like my goal in life, one of my primary goals is to one day not be the undead,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? How do I know to let go and move along and not be the undead that's giving the jump scares and that's showing up with well, you've never been the executive leader before, so something you might not know is, but how do I keep myself from doing that? And I don't know. I assume it's hard because I've seen so many people struggle with it. So like, what do I need to learn now to keep myself from having to have that stake driven through my heart that I'm sure is super painful for that person because they care.
Yeah, and I
right?
think there's a couple of things there, right? I call it the scary founder syndrome. So for all you leaders out there and founders that are listening, don't be the scary founder. But there's something about there's personal attachment, right? So you see it anytime you make something, right? You create a piece of art. You put something of yourself into it. And it becomes part of you. And then the thought of somebody else taking that piece of art and making it and making changes to it, making it different, or even just the thought of like separating yourself from that piece of art, it becomes really, really difficult. And I think in, creative organizations, it's something you have to become very, very aware of because we all have personal attachment to things that we make, right? And we make it a certain way for a reason, right? I painted this picture in this way because that's what makes sense to me and it's what works, right? And it is part of my artistic expression. I'm using that as an analogy now to when we create, business models or systems. The founder is the creator, right? And the founder puts something of themselves into it. Now, sometimes that piece of art or that business model could benefit from objectivity. And that's where it gets tricky, right? If the founder's too personally invested and has a hard time stepping back and allowing that sense of objectivity in order to create an even better work. That's why books have editors. That's why there's, you write the first draft and somebody else comes and says, you got to change all these things. Now, sometimes there's the artist can say, no, this is non-negotiable. This is part of I'm not changing that, right? And these other things I'm willing to change. But so, yeah, for a founder, how do you create that? How do you allow for that objectivity?
Yeah, and Luke, you spoke to how do you start developing that willingness now, or those muscles now to not be the undead. I think there's something about relevance, right? Building systems in a way that create legacy regardless of presence, and trusting that. But I think it's hard, because where we see this story show up a lot is in companies that just have had everything poured into them. And there's such an identity extracted from that contribution. Like, I contribute relevance to this thing that I have built over 50 years. And now you're saying, like, no longer are you required to contribute to this thing? In fact, it would be more healthy and sustainable if you would not. Like, me in that role, like, it's painful for me to say that and experience that just in this context that we're talking about today. But it's that fear of not being relevant. And we talk about that need for recognition. Like, where does someone get it? Like, where do I get it? If it's not from contributing to this thing that I've been contributing to for 50 years, like, I don't want to be the undead either. But where do I get that thing? Where do I get some signaled value that my life has meaning?
Well, seems like a layup for purpose and recognizing the value of having a purpose that is overarching, that is not tied to specific outcomes or specific situations or specific people or specific companies, but recognizing what the value is that I can contribute to the world regardless of circumstance. I think that makes for a more resilient person and a more resilient leader, and maybe a leader who is less at risk of becoming the undead. Right.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah. So by anchoring to that purpose, it's a little bit, the stakeholder in my purpose doesn't change, but it also, there's a lot of optionality to who the stakeholders are.
Yeah.
Whereas in the undead scenarios, there's only one kind of genre of stakeholder.
Yeah.
And if I lose that singular stakeholder, then I lose contribution. So I agree. It makes a great case for why we champion for purpose.
Yeah.
All right. So some very spooky stories today. Hope that no one was at home with the lights out, but alone having to listen to this. It was, creepy crawly, skin crawling stuff. But the good news is we're monster hunters. We're kind of like the Ghostbusters. And even though we've survived all of these things, we know that sometimes you have to drive the stake through the heart of the scary thing that's happening in business and at work. So hard conversations, difficult people, facing the villains, finding a path forward in dark and spooky woods. Those are all things that we enjoy doing. So you can give us a call, and we would love to talk through that with you. You can call us to come in and exercise some of your corporate demons. And you can do that just by finding us on magicintheroom.com, any social channel, Purpose and Performance Group. We'd love to talk to you. And so thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Sorcery in the Room. Is sorcery scary?
It depends
on what kind of Magic in the Room? Okay.
It is.
Let's just go live some scary stories.
Okay. Sounds good.
We'd love to hear from you and your horror stories.
So until next time, see you on Magic in the Room.
Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Bretterow, and Luke Freeman. and produced by Ben West. Theme music is by Evan Grimm. Title track Fake Love, available on Apple Music. And this podcast was recorded at Storycatcher Studio with video and audio editing and production support by Brad O'Hara and Alicia Crum, with inspiration, strategy and technical support by yours truly, Neil Hughes. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and remember, previous episodes are available at magicintheroom.com.